A point arrives in life when a woman releases the burden she has been bearing. This shift does not stem from resentment or mere weariness, but from a deeper authority emerging within. She lets go of obligations that were never truly her responsibility to maintain. What unfolds in that stillness? What awakens when the hunger for external acceptance fades and something primordial inside her begins to stir? This is not a journey toward emotional detachment. This is a path toward inner completeness. In what follows, you will understand why releasing certain concerns is not an act of desertion, but rather one of self-restoration. You will learn how Carl Jung recognized this transformation as vital for reaching psychological wholeness, how dismantling worn-out behaviors opens room for authentic identity to surface, and you may realize, possibly for the first time, that your tiredness has been guiding you toward freedom all this time. We are stepping into terrain that challenges conventional thinking, the realm where a woman exists entirely on her own terms. Let us move forward together, carefully and with clear vision. You have dedicated years to maintaining harmony for everyone around you. The person who diffuses tension, who absorbs the emotional storms of others, who transforms distress into something manageable for those nearby, while suppressing your own feelings. This was learned early on. Maybe you observed your mother doing this, and her mother too. A heritage of women who pour themselves out until nothing remains and their inner voices fall silent. But what if this behavioral script is not genuine affection? What if what you have labeled as dedication is actually an injury disguised as moral excellence? Jung discussed the persona, the facade we present to fulfill societal expectations. For countless women, this facade is constructed from strands of perpetual nurturing, relentless assistance, and continual self-denial. You grow so intertwined with this character that you lose sight of who exists underneath it. You lose touch with the woman who is separate from what she provides to others. The persona transforms into confinement, and this confinement feels familiar because you have dwelled within it for so long. Think about the archetype of the sovereign ruler, not the ruler positioned on a throne granted by outside forces, but the authority who governs her inner domain. At some juncture, this archetype became twisted. The ruler was conditioned to attend to others rather than command. She was informed that her legitimacy depended on approval, that her position was only secure when she ensured everyone else's ease. And thus, she became a ruler in title alone, seeking affirmation from those who never acknowledged her true status. When you release these concerns, you are not relinquishing your ability to connect deeply. You are relinquishing the falsehood that your value depends on how much strain you can withstand. You're moving away from the notion that virtue equals self-sacrifice, that resilience means remaining silent through your own pain. This is the contradiction Jung grasped profoundly. The more attention you direct toward everything external, the less you inhabit your own existence. The more you try to manage the emotional realities of others, the more you slip from your own foundation. Yet culture resists this realization. When a woman ceases enacting the role of perpetual caregiver, she faces accusations of self-centeredness. When she no longer takes on the emotional turbulence surrounding her, she gets labeled as harsh, distant, unresponsive. This occurs because her evolution disrupts the framework that is dependent on her exhaustion. The established order does not desire women who claim their own authority. It desires women who will keep giving from reserves that are already empty, who will maintain pleasant expressions while they fade away. What occurs when you decline? What occurs when you examine the load you have been shouldering and understand it was never your obligation? The world continues, but something within you undergoes rebirth. You start recognizing the cycle, the automatic urge to repair, to calm, to save. Jung described the maternal complex in its consuming manifestation, the great maternal force that devours instead of sustains. This is not specifically about biological parenting. This concerns the psychological framework that insists you become the eternal provider, the one who sets aside her own requirements for the presumed requirements of all others. It is the internal dialogue that suggests you hold worth only through your utility. If you recognize this voice, write valuable in the comments. Only deserving of affection if you are agreeable. Only possessing merit if you are constantly serving. This complex penetrates deeply. It is inherited. Your grandmother embodied it, your mother lived it, and now it resides within you. An unspoken narrative inscribed in the physical form before language could define it. These women were not lacking in strength. They were molded by influences they could not perceive, shaped by circumstances that required their self-negation as the price of inclusion. They acted according to what survival demanded, but mere survival differs from genuine flourishing, and what was essential for their circumstances need not define your path forward. Underneath the drive to constantly attend to others dwells a hidden aspect. Jung explained that this shadow contains all we have dismissed, suppressed, or refused to acknowledge within ourselves. For the woman who has dedicated her existence to being agreeable, being gentle, being endlessly tolerant, the shadow harbors a deep well of fury, years of unrecognized anger, locked within the physical body, lying in wait. This is not the explosive anger that flares and then subsides. This is the frozen anger that hardens, that becomes bitterness, that gradually contaminates the source from which you have been sustaining yourself. You sense it occasionally, a sudden flash of resentment when someone assumes you will provide. Once more, a surge of weariness that has nothing to do with physical fatigue and everything to do with emotional drainage. A subtle inner voice that states, "I can no longer continue this way." That voice is not your adversary, it is your guide. It is the aspect of you that still holds the memory that you are not simply a role. You are an individual. You are a conscious being. You are more than the services you render to others. The physical form understands this before conscious thought does. You may discover yourself unexplainably weary, persistently unwell, incapable of summoning the vitality you previously possessed. This is not frailty. This is intuitive knowing. Your physical form is declining to perpetuate a behavior that your inner self has not yet been capable of articulating. Jung comprehended the psychosomatic dimension of emotions that remain unprocessed. When the inner being cannot find expression, the physical body will demand attention. Your weariness is not inadequacy, it is communication. The moment has arrived to cease. A distinction exists between genuine empathy and unhealthy dependency. Genuine empathy is the capacity to observe another person's distress without dissolving into it. Unhealthy dependency is the compulsion to assume that distress as though it belonged to you, to hold the belief that fixing what is damaged in another person falls under your responsibility. Genuine empathy establishes connection. Unhealthy dependency creates confusion. One respects limits, the other eliminates them. You have been operating in the second mode for so long that you may not even recognize the difference anymore. You believe that loving someone means carrying their emotional weight, that being a good partner, a good friend, a good daughter means never saying no, that your job is to make sure everyone around you is comfortable, even if it means you are constantly uncomfortable. But this is not love. This is a transaction disguised as devotion. You give endlessly, hoping that one day someone will finally see you, finally appreciate you, finally give back to you in the way you have given to them. But that day rarely comes, because the people who have learned to take from you have no incentive to stop. They are not cruel, they are simply accustomed, and you have trained them well. If you are tired of being invisible, write SEEN in the comments. So what happens when you finally step back? When you stop offering yourself up as a solution to other people's problems? Initially, there is discomfort. The people who have relied on your endless availability will push back. They will accuse you of changing, of being different, of not caring anymore. And they will be right. You are different. You have stopped participating in the dynamic that kept them comfortable at your expense. This pushback is not evidence that you are doing something wrong. It is evidence that you are finally doing something right. You are disrupting a system that was built on your silence, and systems do not give up power willingly. But here is what else happens. As you hold your ground, as you refuse to return to old patterns, something shifts. The people who truly value you will adjust. They will learn that you have limits, and they will respect those limits. The people who do not adjust, who continue to demand that you shrink yourself for their comfort, will reveal themselves. And you will finally see clearly who has been in your life because they love you, and who has been in your life because they use you. This clarity is painful, but it is necessary. You cannot build a life of integrity on a foundation of illusion. You cannot step into your power while pretending that everyone around you has your best interest at heart. Some people do, many people do not, and learning to discern the difference is part of the work. Jung spoke of the process of individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are by shedding who you are not. This process requires confrontation, not with others, though that may happen, but primarily with yourself. You must confront the parts of you that have been complicit in your own suffering, the part that said yes when you meant no, the part that accepted less than you deserved because you feared being alone, the part that silenced your own voice to keep the peace. These are not easy confrontations, but they are liberating, because once you see how you have participated in your own diminishment, you can finally choose differently. To integrate the shadow is to turn toward these rejected parts with curiosity instead of judgment. What would happen if you allowed yourself to be angry without shame? What would happen if you admitted that sometimes you do not want to help? You do not want to listen. You do not want to be the strong one everyone leans on. What if your so-called selfishness is actually self-preservation? What if your desire to withdraw is not coldness, but wisdom? The shadow integration is not comfortable. It requires you to see the ways you have participated in your own diminishment, to acknowledge that you taught people how to treat you, that you accepted crumbs and called it love, that you stayed in situations that slowly eroded your spirit because you feared being alone more than you feared being lost. This is not about blaming yourself. It is about taking responsibility for your part in the pattern so that you can finally change it. And as you do this work, as you bring light to the dark corners of your psyche, something extraordinary happens. The parts of you that you feared were monstrous reveal themselves as simply human. Your anger is not destructive, it is information. Your selfishness is not cruelty, it is boundary. Your withdrawal is not abandonment, it is return. You are not becoming a worse person by integrating your shadow. You are becoming a whole one. The child within you begins to awaken. Not the wounded child who needs constant reassurance, but the free child who knew how to play, how to dream, how to say no without guilt, and yes, without fear. This child was not broken. She was buried, covered over by years of conditioning that taught her to be good instead of real, to be liked instead of honest, to be safe instead of alive. But she is still there, and she is ready to come out. This integration is the heart of Jung's work. The conscious adult and the instinctual child, learning to inhabit the same body, the same life, the wisdom of experience, meeting the spontaneity of innocence, the structured mind, embracing the wild heart. You become both grounded and free, both responsible and playful, both strong and soft. You are no longer split, you are whole. To embrace your true self, write whole in the comments. And from that wholeness, you step into a new kind of authority. Not the authority that demands obedience, but the authority that commands respect simply by existing in integrity. You do not need to raise your voice. You do not need to justify your choices. You do not need to explain yourself to people who are not willing to understand. You simply are, and that is enough. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of the self with a capital S. Not the ego, which is concerned with image and approval, but the self, which is the totality of who you are. The self does not negotiate. It does not compromise its essence for acceptance. It does not contort itself to fit into spaces that were never meant to hold it. The self simply exists in its fullness, radiating its truth without apology or explanation. When you embody this level of being, you become what Jung called individuated. You are no longer living according to collective expectations or familial scripts. You are living from your own inner authority. You have done the work of separating what is truly yours from what was imposed upon you. You have claimed your life as your own. And this claiming is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of profound self-love. The feminine energy you now carry is different from the feminine energy you were taught. You were taught that femininity means accommodation, that being a woman means making yourself smaller so others can feel bigger, that your power lies in how well you serve. But this is not the sacred feminine. This is the distorted feminine, the feminine that has been shaped by patriarchal structures to serve the status quo. The true feminine is sovereign. She is the goddess who creates and destroys with equal grace. She is the moon that waxes and wanes according to her own cycle, not the demands of others. She is the ocean, deep and vast and utterly uncontrollable. She is fierce in her tenderness and tender in her fierceness. She holds life in one hand and death in the other, knowing that both are necessary for transformation. When you stop caring in the old way, you access this primal feminine power. You are no longer performing femininity, you are embodying it. And embodied femininity is magnetic in a way that performance never can be. It is authentic, it is rooted, it is whole. And it does not need external validation because it knows its own worth from the inside out. This is the vibrational shift that changes everything. When you stop negotiating your essence for acceptance, you become magnetic in a completely different way. You attract what is truly meant for you. You repel what is not. And you trust the process because you are no longer afraid of being alone. You have discovered that solitude, when chosen consciously, is not loneliness. It is sanctuary. It is the place where you meet yourself without distortion, without performance, without pretense. It is where you remember who you are. The legacy of this transformation is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not need witnesses or validation. You are not doing this for an audience. You are doing this because you finally understand that your life belongs to you, that your energy is sacred, that your peace is non-negotiable, and that the greatest gift you can give to the world is not your sacrifice, but your wholeness. When you break the pattern, you free not only yourself, but also the generations that follow. Your daughter, if you have one, will not inherit the same wound. Your niece, your goddaughter, the young women in your life will see a different model. They will see a woman who knows her worth, who honors her boundaries, who does not apologize for taking up space. And they will learn, without you having to teach them explicitly, that it is possible to be loving without being self-abandoning, to be strong without being hard, to be feminine without being subservient. This is the invisible inheritance, the energetic cord cut, the ancestral pattern released. You are doing the work that your grandmother could not do, that your mother did not know how to do. And by doing it, you are changing the entire lineage. The women who come after you will breathe easier. They will stand taller. They will know in a way you had to discover for yourself that they are sovereign from the very beginning. So when you stop caring about what was never yours to hold, what remains? What fills the space that was once occupied by obligation, by guilt, by the relentless need to be everything to everyone? The answer is simple, though not always easy. What remains is you, the essential self, the true queen, not the one who wears the crown for show, but the one who reigns over her own inner kingdom, with wisdom, with compassion, with an unshakable knowing that she is enough, exactly as she is. You are not less for having boundaries. You are more. You are not selfish for honoring your needs. You are self-aware. You are not cold for refusing to participate in dynamics that drain you. You are discerning. And discernment in a world that thrives on the depletion of women is a revolutionary act. This is the final stage of awakening, not the dramatic enlightenment of myth, but the quiet settledness of a woman who has come home to herself, who has walked through the fire of transformation and emerged with her essence intact, who has faced the judgment of others and chosen her own approval instead, who has released the need to be seen, understood, or validated by anyone other than herself. And in that release, she finds freedom. The kind of freedom that does not need to prove itself, that does not need to perform, that simply exists in the fullness of its own being. She is a queen who has stopped caring about the opinions of those who never truly saw her. And in that not caring, she has found the deepest care of all, the care for her own soul, the reverence for her own life, the love that begins and ends with the self, and from there radiates outward without depletion, without demand, without end. And together, in this quiet revolution of self-reclamation, we are rewriting what it means to be a woman who has finally, beautifully, stopped caring about anything that was never truly hers to begin with. If you are reclaiming your power, write sovereign in the comments.